Hello, near and far. Welcome to Tuesday Chapel, the joy of wholeness or exorcising Descartes. We're so blessed today. We're so blessed today to have with us a SKSM Grad, somebody that's made his rounds through the U.S., having worked, in Canada, yes. And currently is the minister at the UU Congregation of Marin. Marcus Hartlief is here to bless us with his presence. And also, some little things to know about Marcus, because I spent plenty of time reading. Marcus is not only a minister himself, he's married to a minister, and one of his mothers is a minister. And they currently have a 3-year-old son. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, good to be with you, Emily and Sophia and Deborah, and a couple other people who I see faces instead of names. I think there's as many of you up there as there are here in the room. Let's begin to have a time of worship, of centering, of being with one another with our whole hearts and minds, and especially today, bodies. With a reading from Phil Porter. Someone in the past, long since dead, or maybe a committee of the faithful, also long since dead, decided that body and spirit were mortal enemies that could never get along. That crowd may have just been having a bad day, but years of culture and language have propped up this point of view. We have even been led to believe that one is good and the other is suspect, and I think you know which is which. Where did this all go wrong? Somewhere back there, human experience began to be divided up into neat little categories. I'm sure it was a good idea at the time, but we've mastered separation and categorization. What we need right now is to pull it all back together, to see how richly intertwined all of our experience is, to have it all together, thoughts, feelings, and those glimpses of a bigger reality that we call spirit are all physical experiences, much like any other physical sensation we experience in our bodies. So welcome in body or through other means to be gathered together, still wherever you are, in and completely a body. Let's sing, and we're going to sing Gathered Here, which if you need it, it's 389, and I'm wondering if we can get to a round. We'll see. If we'll start singing it, and if you want to jump into a second part, go for it. This is a song also written by that same author and teacher, Phil Porter. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
As we come together as a group of Star King community, we often are drawn back with our recitation of our chalice lighting. So I ask you to please join with me as we light the chalice. With the kindling of this flame, we reaffirm our commitment to accept life's gifts with grace and gratitude,
and to use them to bless the world in the spirit of love.
When I was just starting seminary, I went over to the dance studio, Interplay, where I had my embodied spiritual practice throughout my time here, and I was talking about, I think maybe I hadn't even just started yet. I was just about to start, and I was saying how great it was that I was going to have this creative, expressive form, Interplay, and I'm gonna share a little bit with you in our worship today. And the teacher, Cynthia Winton Henry, Cynthia and Phil were the two who started this practice. And Cynthia said, yes, it is really good, because you go somewhere like seminary and everything is wrong with the world. Everything, there's just a critical thing to say about everything, that you get into you get your focuser. I don't know if you know about your focuser. Your focuser is this little spot right here, and it gets very tight when you read too many books. Ecclesiastes 12:12, if you need the scriptural reference. When you get your focuser too tight and everything is wrong with the world, there's just so much criticism and critique, it can be hard to remember the body and its purpose to find joy. And so it was good. It was good to have a place to play and dance alongside struggling, wrestling with all the real things that are wrong in the world here. So that's my story. And I think that is why we come to spiritual community, why we gather in churches and other forms of spiritual community, to be reminded that despite all of the pain and suffering, there is joy, that we need that reminder over and over and over again. So would you sing again with me, and we can just stay seated as we sing. It's meditation on breathing. Welcome. 10:009, that teal hymnal. And again, feel free to just stay on the melody or grab a different part if you'd like.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Would you take in a deep breath and let it out with a sigh? And maybe do that one more time with an audible, loud sigh. Holy One, Holy Wonder, God of many names. The weight of the world is on our shoulders. The weights of those we love are on our hearts. We gather, taking a moment to breathe more deeply on a Tuesday afternoon, to remember our calling, to walk in this world aware of all that is broken and holding on to all that is beautiful. We hold together our brothers and sisters and siblings of all sorts in the United Methodist tradition. We grieve with those who are grieving. We are outraged with those who are outraged. As we feel the ground of our culture shaky beneath us, it's good to be together, to sing together in small groups and across distances to remind one another, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, in one strong body, in the struggle and the power. We ask you, Spirit, draw near. Amen. And if you would, just take a hand and actually draw that Spirit near for yourself, whatever that looks like. And take that hand and just make some smooth drawing motions. And try making some choppy drawing motions sometimes. Spirit needs a little chop to get going. And see if you can make some smooth and fast. It's not our body habit, but you can move smooth and fast. And then see if you can make some choppy and slow. And play with the space as far as you can from your own body. Feel your reach. And then play with the space right in close as you can, or even touching your own body. And go ahead and make a shape with your hand. And then make another shape and hold it. Make another shape and hold it. Make 3 shapes faster than you can think. Make a few more. Go ahead and let that out with a sigh. So I'm going to ask Eddie to put on a piece of music, and I'm going to invite you to just do a one-hand dance. And if your other hand gets involved too, that's okay. But a one-hand dance on behalf of someone or something that's on your heart today. Letting Spirit move through you and into you that way. Just one more deep breath, let out a sigh. Another few words from Phil Porter. Being in your body? What could that possibly mean? Isn't the body a temporal shell that will cast aside like the carapace of a molting cicada? Won't we move on to something more noble, more ethereal, like those togaed gods in the movies wafting around on clouds pumped from offstage on a fog machine? Won't the true beauty of our souls finally be revealed at the end time so that we can cast aside our concern for wrinkly skin, lumpy thighs, hairs that grows only where it shouldn't, and all the unseemly burps and urges of day-to-day life? Won't we finally be light and lithe? This is what he asks in a piece from a book titled The Slightly Mad Rantings of a Body Intellectual. He says, don't you wish? But how did we get where we are today? All self-conscious and gangly and embarrassed for ourselves. We should be plumped up like arrogant roosters, our fullness ruffling every feather. Instead, we slump in wobbly shame, not quite ready to claim the all of who we are, have been, will be. At some tragic point in our life, mere months after birth, we passed out of that all too short phase where everything we did was adorable, charming, and amusing, and entered into the land of no. From then on, someone or other was telling us, don't do that. Parents, teachers, preachers, bosses all had expert opinions about what we shouldn't be doing. Is it any wonder, then, that over time our physicality became more and more restricted and restrained? Slowly but surely, the ropes were wrapped around us until we could barely move. Yes, sitting still is a valuable skill to learn, but did we have to stop breathing as well? So ends the reading. Our son, Henry, who Matthew mentioned is 3 years old, has not yet reached the age of no. He has, for the last 3 weeks, been wearing a bright red and gold speckled tutu all day, every day. Will not take it off, except to sleep. We've drawn that line. I remember one of my early moments of no was about his age, maybe a little bit older, playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles at the preschool that I went to, right down here at the bottom of Cedar, and we were playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that was not allowed. That was against the rules to play fight, and so we were given a sharp no, and it was the first aha awakening. Welcome. That my body could be dangerous, that my body could be destructive. My first lesson in that it was safer to keep my body seated and still to focus on the life of the mind, and I practiced that diligently for many years. My hunch is that in this room I'm not alone in that practice. And so we become seekers on the pursuit of wholeness, looking to have it all, have that intellect, have that rigorous life of the mind, and yet also lift up these other layers of our reality as equally valid, equally valuable. And I'm guessing that we all know the experience of dissociating in little or big ways, of disconnecting from some layer of our experience to protect ourselves. You know that? Anybody know? And so I think we also have some moments. We all know some moments of repairing or healing that disconnection, moments when we feel more whole. And besides our own experience of having wholeness and brokenness in ourselves, I think there's been some serious consequences for our world's brokenness in living out that body-mind split, right? Because more gets ascribed to these categories than just the mind or spirit and the body. We map so much onto this hierarchy. First, we think of children as living more in the body plane of reality and adults up in the mind. And then it develops, and of course, men are associated with that higher realm of the mind. Women, trans folks with that lower realm of the body. Whiteness is elevated as the purest, most spiritual, right? Seen as the norm, while black and brown bodies, all bodies of color, are associated with the physical, with this lower realm in this hierarchy. And while it does have material benefits and privileges to some and dire destructive consequences for others, and I don't want to whitewash all of that, it's also true that this separating is harming all of us. It's harmful to all of us. So one tiny example, in case you're not aware, and I have to say this is something I share with congregations, and you might be a little more aware of it than them, that our predominantly white Unitarian Universalist congregations and predominantly white churches in general are mocked throughout the rest of the culture for our inability to keep the beat on the music that we listen to, right? Do you know this? And maybe it's not that big a deal that we can't get synced up on the 2 and the 4, but I think it's indicative of a larger sacrifice that we've made. A sacrifice of our embodiment in order to accept the privileged position of living in the realm of the mind. We sacrifice our bodies to live in that realm of the mind. And when I was a student here, Rebecca Parker was the president, and I learned so much from her. And I'm going to share a piece of hers that really will lead us to the subject of this afternoon's exorcism. She writes that the Enlightenment tradition, as represented by Descartes, elevates mind and over body to such an extent that it raises doubt regarding the body's significance or even existence. We cannot know the world exists. We can only know that our mental operations exist. We cannot know there is objective reality. We can only know our subjective experience. This world becomes nothing more than a projection of the mind. You're familiar with this thinking, I imagine. And so Rebecca leads us into Descartes' study. And I imagine it just strewn with books and paper, maybe a ratty armchair in the corner, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. That's all just in my head. Parker describes Descartes struggling with the question of whether he could be sure he existed. And it's interesting, she says, that Western philosophy reached the point where a human being could sit in a study wondering whether he really existed. Descartes, meditating on this question, came to his famous conclusion, I think, therefore I am. And now, just for a moment, she invites us, imagine the other things Descartes could have said. He might have said, I have tasted the sweetness of oranges, therefore I am. I have felt the salt of the sea against the blackberry scratches on my bare legs, therefore I am. I have felt your hand in mine and know that rise of joy at your presence, therefore I am. But Descartes was uncertain of the life of the senses and our connection to each other. He had forgotten about it. Robert Bly, the poet, writer, and teacher known for his work in the mythopoetic men's movement, he reports about a pair of dreams Descartes had the night before he concluded, I think, therefore I am. Descartes wrote about these dreams in his journal. In the first, he was walking along a long road with a great wind blowing. And the wind was so hard, he was blown over. His left side was crumpling up. The left side of his body in tune with the right side of his brain. That split brain, researchers tell us, is the dimension of the self connected to the life of the emotions, the aesthetics. Descartes dreamed he was losing half of his being. And the other dream, he was sitting with a dictionary and flipped through the pages in a frenzy while words vanished before his eyes. And Bly said about that dream, I know which words were disappearing from Descartes' dictionary. They were words like cinnamon, shadows, warm wind. And now going from Descartes' dictionary, Descartes' study and Descartes' dictionary back several centuries, the scene is Gethsemane, the garden. And they just had that Passover meal that became known as the Last Supper, and Jesus just told his friends, his disciples, his groupies that one of them would betray him, that he will soon die. It's been an eventful evening, and being that deep spiritual guy he is, Jesus asks the disciples to hold vigil, to stay awake through the night and pray with him. Holding vigil, it's one of those archetypal spiritual practices that I think we all experience, whether we name it that or not. Waiting for news of a loved one, attending a sick bed, curling up around a beloved pet as it becomes clear they'll soon die. Even tossing and turning awake at night, disturbed by something in the news or shaken by some event in your life, can be a form of vigil. And here's the thing about holding vigil, the physicality and spirituality. The physicality and spirituality of the experience are inseparable. The body does not simply fade away while the spirit is racked with intensity. No, if you've ever accompanied somebody in the hospital, you know how physically exhausting holding vigil is. That's not a separate mundane experience, while the real meaningful spiritual experience is happening up here in the profound thoughts you're having. No, the physicality is the spirituality. It's all one. But so Jesus takes a moment alone to pray, and then comes back to his people and finds they've fallen asleep. And you know, Jesus is shocked and mad, but come on, after a day like that. And if you've ever attended a Passover Seder, you know how many glasses of wine they were expected to drink. But the story reports, Jesus says to them, he says, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And there it is, right? The mind-body split, that hierarchical dualism that we're still struggling with today. So I take it back, we can't lay all the blame at the feet of Descartes. But what's fascinating about the story is that we know almost certainly those were not the words of the historical Jesus. This is one of the many places where those who wrote the Gospels many years after Jesus' death layered onto his story ideas from Greek philosophy which were circulating in their communities. And many of those Greek philosophers were working hard at the project of separating out reality into its component parts, of defining a hierarchy of matter and spirit. So Plato and Aristotle began to define this mind-body split as they transformed the landscape of the abstract existential thinking from a mytho-poetic approach, one based in myth and story, to one based in logos and logic and reason. But the source material that radical rabbi was dealing with was not Greek philosophy, but the Jewish tradition. And when we look to the stories in the Hebrew Bible, that mind-body split is absent. Like when Jacob has his dark night of the soul, and he's wrestling with the biggest questions, with God, with holding his own vigil. And in the story, he literally wrestles someone, literally wrestles a man, an angel, who wrenches his hip socket out of joint. You can't separate the physical from the spiritual. And so this philosophical tradition that we've inherited from the Greeks to the Enlightenment, I think it's rich with value and blessing. But we've taken some of these ideas and shaped our bodies around theories as if they were truth. And for our own wholeness, for the wholeness of the planet, we've got to start remembering to take a little more stock in the sweetness of the orange, in the bitter salt sea against blackberry scratches on bare legs, in the warmth of a hand, in the sensation of joy. And take a little less seriously our thoughts, which will always clamor with insistence at their own importance. And again, Rebecca reminds us of the stakes. To doubt the existence of the world, to doubt the existence of the world is implicitly to doubt grace. The sweet smell of a rose is not a gift, but a projection. Nothing was given to us. No cup of water, no sunset, no Beethoven symphony. We dreamed it all up. Doubt, this profound, leads to senseless violence. Under the influence of the alienated, enlightened mind, it's easy to bomb Baghdad because we fail to imagine the reality of other people's lives, cultures, and histories. It's easy to violate the environment, cut down the rainforests, and practice agriculture in a way that makes the earth barren. With an alienated mind, care becomes impossible. So every day, the world beckons not only with stories of suffering, with the crazy-making news, but the world beckons with its beauty, calling on us to act responsibly, ethically, to receive the gift of the world with gracious appreciation, to feel gratitude, not as an idea, but as a feeling in the body, and to respond from that feeling with care. Yes. So let's sing again. Let's sing about roses. Maybe we'll go over to the rose garden later today or sometime this week and feel them and smell them and even get pricked by one. I know this rose will open. It's 396, or just pick it up as we go. I know this rose will open. I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Let's rise in body or in spirit and reach out a hand or touch a shoulder and be connected. And we'll put a hand out to connect with all of you across space. Feeling your oneness with us, your bodies connected to all that you've ever been and all that you will ever be, all in yourselves in this moment, and these hands holding yours, hands that have held babies, and wiped tears, hands that have picked up broken pieces, hands that have comforted and made and built and loved. May we use these hands to bless the world. Maybe so. Amen. We'll just stay connected for a moment longer. We'll sing once more. I'll sing out aloud, you sing it back. You know what notes. Circle round for freedom.
Circle round for freedom.
Circle round for peace.
Circle round for peace.
For all of us in prison.
For all of us in prison.
Circle for me.
Circle for me.
Circle for the planet.
Circle for the planet.
Circle for each soul.
Circle for each soul.
For the children of our children.
For the children of our children.
Keep the circle.
Keep the circle.